Hi there. Today we're going to be having a look at the 2020 Term 2 practical test, which eventually took place in August. If you have a look at the web page, you'll find the test paper is a PDF, and there's also the file 2020 August practical test.zip, which contains the data files you'll be using in the exercise. Please extract them in a suitable folder, as I have done here. I'll have the question paper up on the right hand side of your screen here so that you can follow along. Right, we start with a scenario of the 2019 Rugby World Cup. So for the first question, we're going to work in one rugby. Please open that file. And you'll see we're given a Word file with some fields which indicate, among other things, that mail merge is going to be expected of us. So first, set the left margin of the document to 2.5 centimeters. We'll go to Layout and Margins, and down at the bottom, Custom Margin. We are only supposed to change the left margin, and while it's already 2.54, that's actually 1 inch. We want to make it exactly 2.5 centimeters. And there we go. Change the line spacing throughout the document to a single line. So Control A, we can select the entire document, and you'll find line spacing over here. We can change it to 1 line. Change the paper size to legal. Legal is actually an American paper size, so it's a bit of a strange requirement in a South African exam. So we go to Layout again, and we find size, and you can choose legal. Add the word invitation as a watermark diagonally across a page and format it to red. So we are going to a design feature. You'll find watermark, and as with most things, we're going to add a custom watermark. Most of your exercises will ask you to use the more hidden items in these menus. So it's a text watermark, and the text is going to be invitation. They don't say what font. It's going to be diagonal, and we're going to choose red. There we go, and you'll see invitation in the middle of the page. Apply any bevel effect to the Rugby World Cup image. So we select the Rugby World Cup image, and we can go to Picture Tools Format. You will find Picture Effects. We've got Bevel. We weren't told which one to use. This little one in the top left hand corner looks nice. Prepare a mail merge by merging the data from the table in one scores with the current word processing file as follows. Filter the list of recipients so that only those players with total points above 40 will receive the letters. Right, we're going to mailings. We are going to select recipients. We're going to use an existing list. You'll find that when you do that, it normally opens in this My Data Sources folder. You'll have to choose the folder where your data is located, which for me is here, and we're going to open 1 scores. And we are going to use sheet 1, that is the only sheet. You don't see anything visible at this point, but it has opened that. This Edit Recipient List button is no longer grayed out. We can choose to filter the list. You'll find that in the more refined recipient list set of options. So we can filter. We are going to choose total, and not equal to, not just greater than. The question asks for 40 and above, so that's greater than or equal to 40. Okay. We are also asked to sort the recipients in ascending order according to their name, so we're going to sort it by, well, player, we assume is the name field, and it is already ascending order. There we go. Looking at the questions, I see I've missed one. Skipped that in applying the 2 that work with the mail merge recipients. We skipped the question, insert merge fields in the grey highlighted area. So, okay. That applies to these two fields indicated with the tags. I'm going to replace, including those tags, we're going to insert a merge field player, and again under team, I'm going to replace insert a merge field team. Is there any mention of the points? Nope. So that looks like the completed merge field. I can preview the results over here and see what it's going to look like. So represent your country, Wales. You'll notice that now Wales, there's no space between Wales and the word, so the preview showed me that we're missing a space there. Okay, let's finish up. As I complete the merge and save the final merge documents as one invitations. So to be able to save the completed file merge, I'm going to have to edit individual documents for all of them. And now I have two Word files, the one rugby file that I've been working on, and also this letters document which contains the completed merge. So that one I can file, save as, and go to the folder that contains my test. Make sure you save this where your examiners are going to be able to find the question, one invitations. Make sure you use the name that is asked of you in the test. This is what your examiners will be looking for. Right, and we're done with the Word documents. We can close that file. Make sure with this one rugby doc that you save the file before you close it. If you don't, there's a chance that when you just press X, we sometimes are creatures of habit, click cancel, no work saved. We can now go on to the next question, which will use the to statistics file. So, scrolling the question paper, open to statistics and work in the statistics worksheet. Here is to statistics, and you'll see it only has the one worksheet, so that's one we'll be using. Merge and center the text in cells A1 to AH. We select that, merge and center. Apply text wrapping to A2 to AH. Wrap text. Sometimes they will phrase this differently, as in ensure that all the text is visible, and then you're supposed to know that you use wrap text. Enter a function in cell B3, here is B3, to determine the number of characters in Andre's name in A3, and copy this down. So that will be the len function equals len, and we're going to be the len of A3, and that is all we use. That little block, green block on the bottom right hand corner, the drag handle of the autofill control, will copy it down for us. But I could have also copied, selected, arrange and pasted with the same result. Use a function in K2 to display the current date. K2 is there. Change the format of the date to display as follows: day, day, month, month, year, 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 which will be on the date that I'm doing this, the 10th of August, 10/08, and then the full year 2020. All right. The function is today. The function does not affect how it is displayed. The way it is displayed is the way the current system date displays. So if you have a look at the top right hand side of my screen, you will see my current system date. And the two formats showing on the screen, the top one is the short date, and the Monday 10 August, which flashed on there briefly, that was the long date. But we can customize the way it displays by choosing a custom number format. And you'll see custom, and we already have this as an example. I'm now going to say DD MM YY. If I'd used 3 M's, as you can see in some of these examples, then it would have said AUG for August as it stands at the moment. Okay, we've swapped the date order. Then add a function in C3 to determine the code of each player by combining the following. C3 is here. 2 points of the player in E3. So we're going to take the value of that equals E3. And I'm going to be combining this as text. I can't use a plus sign because that will try to add these together numerically. We're going to use the ampersand character. This is the shorthand for concatenate that works across all versions of Excel in use at the moment. And to this we need to add the 2 letters of the player's name counted from the second letter in cell A3. So we can't use the left function for this because left works strictly from the left edge of the value. 2 letters would be HA. We can't use right. We need to use something in the middle, and that is the mid function. You'll see we start with the text, which is in cell A3, and just remember that my computer is set to use the semicolon as a separator in these fields. This will be the case if you have something set to a South African decimal comma. All right, and then we're going to have the starting number, which will be character number 2, and we want 2 characters. With the mid function, pay attention carefully. The first digit is where you're going to start from. The second one is how many characters, not the ending character. Right. And then it says the code must be displayed in all capital letters. So for the last bit, it doesn't matter really whether we put this at the beginning of the function or around the mid, but we're going to have to use the upper function, upper, and we're going to apply that in this instance to the whole function. Upper will cause all letters in that to be raised to capital letters. And there we go. Copy the formula down. There are no cells that are referred to here in the sense of an absolute cell reference, so I don't have to do any other changes. There we go. And that's the end of the Excel question. So make sure you save again before you close, and we can move on to the database question, question 3. So for the database question, if required, make sure that you enable content. Then delete the ID field from the table as it is no longer needed. That is the venue table. Right click and go to design view. We don't need the ID field, but you'll notice the ID field at the moment is set to a primary key. This means we're going to get a warning first that we are deleting a field, and then another warning that we are deleting the primary key field. You have to be really sure when you're going to be doing this. Do you want to permanently delete the field? Yes. It requires to delete the primary key. Do you want to delete it anyway? Yes. Deleting is permanent, but if that is what the question requires you to do, you need to go ahead in spite of the warnings. Change the field size of the stadium field to 25. Here is the stadium field, and if you look towards the general section at the bottom, we can choose 25. Amend the table so that any text entered in the you don't have it in this particular test, but in an exam you would have an input mask sheet that you could refer to for the controls. But format like this, if we go to view, yes, you must save. Some data may be lost. That's because we reduced the field size of that one field. Yes, and you'll notice stadium is now displayed in capital letters. If I go back to format and delete that, save, you'll notice that they are not displayed in capital letters. So let's just put our formatting instruction back. Ensure that the match officials is a required field. This is match official, and required field is also one of the general options. We can change that to yes. Amend the table so that any text, okay, we have done that. Set the default value of the capacity field at 1000. We are going to capacity, At the moment, this is displayed as short text. That is probably not correct, but we can change default value to 1000. It would have made more sense for capacity to be a number, but we don't have any explicit requirement that we are supposed to change it, so we'll leave it at short text for the moment. Save and close the table. You don't have to close access, we just close the table. Yes, make sure you save the changes. The integrity rules are because of the default value and also the formatting features. Do you want to save? Yes. That might have affected some data that we'd saved. Create a form called form 3.2 based on the venue table and modify it as follows. As soon as I say modify, that means I can assume we're going to use the form wizard rather than one of the other ones. Let's create a blank form. So form wizard. It's really hard to make out from the blurred little picture in the test. I can zoom in a little bit. I can make out that it's city. It looks like stadium. I think that's capacity, and that looks like match official because there seems to be a name. So we don't need date of birth and we don't need country. That leaves the first 4 fields. Right. Back to the question paper. Note the alignment of the heading. So I'm going to have to use the format option that appears in the form layout controls at the top. Choose the heading, which at the moment reads venue, and center it. In the example, the heading reads form 3.2, so we can change that text to match FRM 3.2. Add a button from the available controls to the form. The action of the button is to move to the next record. So we go to the design tab in the form layout controls, and we can choose from the available controls the button format, which is, you'll see here, the one labeled with the X's, and I can place it anywhere on the form area. It's going to fill one of these spaces if I use one of those. As soon as I place the button, we get the option to choose the action, record operations, form operations, report options. We're going to use record navigation and go to next record and next. And the picture that is showing at the moment is the correct one. We aren't told to use a particular name, so you can choose whatever you like. And there we are. Now, their particular example is a small little button. It's not part of the question and it's probably not required at all, but if I did want to resize it, you'll see at the moment when I resize, everything resizes, and that's because of the layout of this particular form. If I go to arrange, you will see that we have the options for stacked and tabular. At the moment we're in a stacked layout. If I go to tabular, now it's separated the button from the rest of the controls, and if I did want to resize it, I could. And here we go. But that's not a requirement of this particular option. They didn't say which form or format you had to use. Save this. Again, we have the little X and save. Make sure you save. It asks for a name, form 3.2. Create a query called query 3.3 based on the venue table as follows. So here's our venue table. We can create, and we can use the query wizard. And to start off with, we're going to display stadium. So there's stadium, capacity, match officials, and date of birth. Then modify the query design. We're going to name this while we're in the same little dialog, query 3.3. So there we go, QRY 3.3. Finish. And the second part, display all match officials born on or before the 1st of January 1975. If you have a look at the design view, you'll see the date of birth is a date time. So We're going under the date of birth field in the query, and we're looking at criteria. I want to be younger than 1975/1/1. But now there's a problem. As it stands, Access is going to interpret this as the number 1975 divided by 1 divided by 1. I have to tell Access that this is a date, and I do that by adding a hash key before the date and a hash key after the date. It will now interpret it as a date. There we go. We can go to View, and you'll see everyone who is older than someone born on the 1st of January 1975. Close the query. We're going to close this query, small x. Yes, make sure you save it. I did give it the correct name. If for some reason you had named it incorrectly, make sure you name these correctly before you submit. You can right click on the query or the form or the report and hit rename. The only requirement is that this has to be closed when you rename it. You cannot rename a form or query while it is open. Then open the report, that's this one, and modify it as follows. Insert a function to calculate the average capacity of all the stadiums. So we're going to go to Design View. You can use Layout View as well, but I'm going to use Design View. We are going to add a function to calculate the average capacity, round the answer off to 1 decimal. So we are sorting based on city and grouped on city. In the report footer, you'll notice there's, while it says report footer, no report footer is showing. Grab that little line and drag it down. That will give us some space to put this in. This is going to have to be either in a report footer, a page footer, or a group footer. We don't have any groups, and there are no instructions to group this. Having created some space, we can now insert our function. If you look at the top, the design tools, the AB with a line, that creates a box into which we can type our formula. At the moment, you'll see it says unbound. That is because there is no field associated with this box. If I right click on that, I can go to Properties, and under Control Source, we hit the lines. This is where I have space to type my formula. I could have typed it directly, but this helps me build it. I'm going to be working with the capacity field, and if you can remember the formula, you can just type AVG of capacity. Otherwise, you'll see the little plus next to functions. I can choose the built-in functions. Things like count, average, sum are part of the SQL set. And there we go. So AVG of expression, and that is where my capacity column will appear. Okay. And you'll see here equals AVG of capacity, and it's added the square brackets which Access uses to indicate that this is a column. We also have this little random text field, the label for that edit box that we've got there, so I can display the text capacity. That is part of the question as well. Add an appropriate label to the calculation. Let's just test and see whether this works. So we're going to go to View, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see this mammoth number with lots of decimal places, which brings us to the other part of the question. Round off the answer to 1 decimal place. So I need to modify this function slightly. We need to add to the formula that we have here the round function. Again, if you can't remember that round is the function to use, you can use those little dots. We go to built-in functions, and the round function you'll find under math. There's round. Select, there we go. And you'll notice we have round, and then the number. The number is going to be this calculation we have, AVG. And then we've got a precision. That's the number of decimal points. We want 1 decimal point, and that is our formula. Test this quickly. View, down towards the bottom, round it off. That 0.1 person is going to feel a little squashed. And again, make sure you save this. Don't use the big X unless you need to close the entire axis. We are finished with all the axis questions, so we can use the big X, but save. Make sure you've saved, and you can close. And we can move on to question 4, the last question. This time we're going to work in a web page. You are requested to complete a web page on the World Cup. Open the incomplete 4 players web page. So here's 4 players. I'm going to open this in Notepad++, which should be available to you as well. And you'll see it has already indicated where we're going to have to fill in some of the questions. Right, this is how they want the final product to look. Change the tags so that the text rugby appears in the top or title bar of your browser. That's in the head tag. Remember, the head refers to the meta information that goes with your web page. Things like search engine optimization, any copyright tags that are built as part of the meta information, and the title of your page. So let's add that title, and this is going to be rugby title. And the reason I like using this particular editor is it shows you when you have your beginning and end tags. Your end tag must match your beginning tag. Right, add a HTML code to the image for rugby.jpg in your text folder as follows. The image must appear above the heading. So we're going to put this image tag in here where it says 4.2. This is inside the body of the page and above the heading. IMG SRC. SRC is short for source. Equals. This image is in the current directory and we have to use the full name. They've given it to you here for rugby.jpg, but in some instances you might not be given the .jpg. Then you will have to look at your folder. If it doesn't show it there, which by default most Windows systems won't, you can go to View and make sure that the file name extensions are showing so that you can see the full name of the file. I can copy that name, which among other things is one way of making sure that we spell it correctly. Image source. They also say the height of the image must be 180, so height equals 180 and the width equals 400. The image tag is one of the few tags which doesn't have a closing tag. H1, closing H1, image just as it stands. Can save this document. You can test it at any place just by opening it, and so far this is what we have. No, the example shown on the page does not match the example shown here. This is working with the widths as shown. You will see on the example on the question that the width and height are more or less the same, but the question specifies height of 180 and width twice as wide. So it will be stretched in your result. You use the measurements that appear in the question paper. Format the table as follows. We scroll down, here is question 4.3. That is the table. Add a border with a thickness of 12 to the table. That's one thick border. But border equals 12. Change the spacing between the cells to 10. That is the cell spacing property, equals 10, and add cell padding to the table of 20. Cell padding, this is the space inside the cells around the text, 20. There we go. So save that again. We can go back to our web page and reload, and there is the table with its big and bold highlighting. And that's it. Nice, short and sweet. I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.